All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So greetings and welcome to our session, Effective Assignments, Creating and Grading. So my name's Yvonne Stevenson and I'm an instructional designer here at WT. It's great to see all of you again today. We've got some steady attendees, and so we hope you get a lot out of this session and that this whole week has been a positive experience. So feel free to take notes on anything. Anything we go over today, we're gonna actually be going through quite a bit of settings. It's a little cumbersome, but I'm gonna try and stick to the basics. And I'm gonna cover a lot today, so you'll get a recorded session within the next day or so, and you can slow down the playback or speed it up and get this content again as you need it. So I'm gonna change the slide there. And so today we're gonna take a look at what makes a good assignment. And you can then revise your current assignments if you have them, or begin creating them with confidence once we explore this topic. And of course, we'll look at creating and grading assignments in WTClass as well. And so I know a lot of you may already know how to create and grade an assignment, but please consider sticking around for those portions since there's some new and exciting changes that are happening with our inline grader in WTClass, and we want to make you aware of those new changes so you can take advantage of them. Also, due to time limitations, we aren't really giving ideas on online assignments in this session per se. They may come up organically, but we're really sticking to criteria of a good assignment. But I can provide you with a link to a couple of outside institutions who have lists of ideas if you have like assignment creation block. So just ask for that, or I'll just provide them at the end. And so let's move on to our next slide. So effective assignments should be designed to maximize student success. Setting clear expectations and giving detailed directions are going to help ensure that students will be successful. So in the classroom, it's super easy to make minor adjustments or clarify directions when students don't understand what you're asking for. And so it's usually easy to read the room. We can quickly adjust when we see something they're not getting it. But it's very different online. And so as you begin creating or reviewing your assignments, please ask yourself, what's your intention in giving the assignment? So in other words, before the effectiveness of an assignment can be measured, the assignment must be seen as part of a larger scheme of learning goals and objectives. So it should never just be about creating something to grade. So we want to make sure, what's your intention for giving the assignment? And conversely, what students more commonly ask themselves is, okay, what is the professor looking for in this assignment? So your answer might be what you hope the student learns or gains from the experience of completing the assignment. And so to the extent that you can respond to these questions as you're creating the assignment, you increase the likelihood that you will make an effective assignment. And so let's take a look at Mentimeter. If you want to participate, I am going to present the code here. So if you go to menti.com or download the Mentimeter app and enter in this code, I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat if that's easy for some of you. Oops, voting is closed. We want that open. So 333450 is the code to participate. And so I want to hear from you guys. If you can enter in this code here, again, you don't have to sign up for an account, but I want to know what your frustrations are, experienced if you've been teaching online, or anticipated if you're new to all of this in creating and grading online assignments. So what are some frustrations with creating and grading online assignments? And so hopefully you guys, I will get some participants, and what we're doing here is we're creating a word cloud. We're going to see what words you guys type in, and we'll see. Yay! Thank you for participating. We got one. Making things self-explanatory, clear directions, making time for grading. Oh my gosh, yes, that's a big one. Failure to do the assignment. Yes. Misunderstandings. People want to do the bare minimum, right? Grading time. Dishonesty. Yes, academic dishonesty is a big problem with online courses, but there are ways to mitigate that. Cannot take in time. Yeah. What else is there? Assignments get changed. Not proper, time consuming. Yes. And so what we keep seeing is clear directions. How do I make those directions clear? Because they always ask questions, don't they? Thank you guys so much for participating. Bandwidth, gosh, yes, that is a big problem when you're trying to do an assignment and maybe uploading files. And so we're going to talk about a lot of these things and hopefully give you guys some solutions on how to get rid of some of these frustrations. Thank you guys for participating. Let me go back to my presentation there. Okay, so for now, let's take a student's perspective when designing assignments. So there's 4 parts of online assignments that students typically have questions about. They want to know, what do you want me to learn? Why do I have to learn that? What do I need to know or do to complete the assignment? And how will I be graded? And so what does this translate into for you in your assignment? So this means you should have an objective, a rationale for the assignment, directions, and grading criteria. And so this isn't simple to make these 4 parts clear, as some of you have already expressed as some of your frustrations with assignments online. And most faculty already do this without thinking about it in face-to-face courses. And so the assignment unfolds in class with your direction and student questions. So you don't have to really put too much thought into it when you're in a face-to-face course, but online, it's your responsibility to make this clear within WTClass. So sticking to the criteria here is going to help you create assignments with intention and avoid creating assignments just to have something to grade. If designed well, an assignment gives students a chance to rehearse or practice or integrate the most important knowledge and skills that they've picked up in the class thus far. So let's go more into detail about these. So what do you want me to learn? For you, that translates to the objectives. So start with your course learning goals and objectives and think creatively to devise work that'll help you meet them. So in practice, this means that a good assignment generally does 2 things. It's going to reinforce important learning and offers an opportunity for you to assess the quality of that learning. And so carefully consider what students need to do to show that they've achieved that specific learning goal and objective, and whether the time that it will take for students to complete the assignment successfully is reasonable, considering the workload of your course and other courses. Of course, we can't know what other courses' workloads look like, but at least keep that in mind. Your students are not just in your class. They have other assignments and other demands on them as well. And so if you can connect the assignment to at least one learning goal or objective in your course, that's going to ensure that your assignment's not just busy work, because I see a lot of busy work out there. And so think about efficiency to some degree as you design your course activities. So since time is finite, both for instructors and for students, online faculty members need to be thoughtful about how they ask students to spend their time. So I would say be frugal about available time, resources, and space when you can. And so let's move on to the next one. Why? Why do I have to learn this? So explaining why you've chosen a particular assignment and why you believe it's valuable is often the best way to persuade students to try out an assignment they might otherwise approach skeptically. So you've got to become a salesman, sell your assignments. And most of us aren't used we're not used to doing this. And so I don't blame you if you're like, oh, I don't want to be a salesman, but they're just supposed to do it, right? Because you said I shouldn't have to sell it. Well, when you let students know why the assignment is worthwhile, and let me tell you, online students get extremely jaded, and I don't blame them, because some of them start to look at everything, all online coursework, as busy work. And so they tend to do this when the only end result they see and understand is the number or letter grade. And so a lot of times faculty don't have time to provide feedback. So students fixate instead of on potential learning from that feedback, they just fixate on the number. And so I'll kind of repeat this again. So with an example, so there's usually two types of students, right? And these are the most frustrating when it comes to grades, because you have the student that's obsessed with earning every single possible point. And they'll even email you about, why didn't I get all the points possible? And then you have the other student on the other extreme that just wants to earn the bare minimum. And I know some of you expressed that in the word cloud there. And they're not really engaged or motivated. So if you want your students to focus less on the numerical grade and focus more on the learning, then sell the benefits of completing the assignment and the benefits of the learning that's going to take place in the process. If you can tell them how it helps in the real world or in their desired profession, if you can tell them how the gains associated with the assignment are going to benefit them, they won't focus on the cost so much. And so if you can sell it, I'll bet you will shock your students into compliance, since no one really sells their assignments. They're just like, do this, 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 and I want this. And a lot of times students are like, okay, I'm going to do it. And they see no purpose behind it. And so I know this takes some time, but students will be much more engaged, because whether we want to believe it or not, most students really want to benefit and learn from the things that they put their time into. And so in addition, so research has shown, oops, let me see, we are getting some outside noise. Let me make sure. We're going to do mute all on everybody. There we go. Okay, so research has shown that students frequently prefer some guiding constraints when completing their assignments. And so more detail can lead to more successful student responses. And so if students prefer guiding constraints, that's what the research shows, give it to them. So I know it takes more time to think through directions and assignments, but it's so worth it, because this could drastically improve the quality of the submissions you get. Now, don't be vague. We need to be precise, but we still have to be concise, because students will not read long pages of instructions. And I've seen that. I'm like, oh my gosh, those instructions are so long. Students are not going to read all of that. And sometimes they do require it, and they do have to do it. But here's an example. Don't just say, I want a well-organized essay. That's not as useful as, I want a well-organized paper that has a sharply focused thesis, topic sentences clearly connected to the thesis, logical ordering of paragraphs, and a conclusion that ends with the clincher. You're going to get two completely different submissions with both of those instructions. And here's another example. So I've seen, let's say your assignment asks students to briefly identify a list of important people, places, or technical terms for an assignment. A student reads that, and what's the next question they immediately ask themselves? They think, well, how briefly, right? They're always concerned with, well, how long? And so student nature is super strange, because they'll wonder how briefly, yet few students will ask for clarification. And then it's even weirder, because most of the students will, instead of being brief, will now be as long-winded as possible, hoping that a lengthier response is going to translate into more points. And so your phrasing, if it's imprecise, can have exactly the opposite effect you intend. So instead, be specific about what you want. 3 to 5 sentences devoted to each of the following questions. Or if you don't want to be so limited, then say no more than 1 substantial paragraph. That's much easier to understand than briefly identify. And so beware of terms such as analyze, critique, evaluate. They can mean very different things from one discipline to another, or even from one instructor to another. So make sure and give additional explanation of what exactly those words ask them to do. And so more on clear directions. Don't be afraid to ask students to keep your preferences in mind. Don't let your students get away with things that bother you. And so this is an extreme example here that I have, but you may have something that's less extreme, but it's still important to you and your sanity. So say you hate Times New Roman font. It makes you angry every time you see Times New Roman font. Then tell your students the font you prefer. So it's better for you to let them know and add it to the list of things that you want to see in their submissions, It's better for you to let them know than have this become one of the things that you hate about online teaching. And you don't want to take these little things out on students when they're grading. So this goes for submission preferences or any other preferences in the areas of your courses. Ask your students for what you want. Tell them your preferences so you don't end up hating your job. And of course, don't make outrageous demands. Like something that would add extra cost to students would probably be a little excessive, but sometimes it's needed. And so if you're not sure if your demand is outrageous, just ask us and maybe we can help you take care of the issue with a system option in WTClass. So just let us know what your issues may be. And so additionally, if you want students to find information from a source other than your lectures or your assigned readings, you need to tell them so, but you also need to tell them where to look. And so if you want students to obtain informed, authoritative academic sources for the assignment or activity, then write it out. Similarly, if you object to, if you keep seeing a source, Wikipedia, I don't want Wikipedia, well then make sure you tell them you don't want Wikipedia. So be clear on all that too. And so last thing on directions, what to include. So make sure you provide a unique name to the assignment. And this should be the same name as whatever the assignment is listed as in the syllabus. So you want to name it a unique name. We'll talk about why that is. And once we go into WTClass, make sure you have your learning objectives to which the assignment relates to. Remember, you got to sell it. And then put your due dates. Try to make them due on Monday. Don't make them due on Saturday and Sunday, especially if you're not going to be available on the weekends to answer their questions. That's not fair to the student. So you can move your due dates to Mondays or Tuesdays. Fridays are also bad since we run updates on those nights. So typically one Friday a month will be down on Fridays. So don't use Friday due dates. And also include any resources that you recommend, what's acceptable, what's not. Tell them who the audience is. So this could drastically change the types of the responses that you get. So I've seen some fun assignments where students are asked to write a letter to the editor, to a professional journal in their field, or they're writing as someone in a specific role to someone else in a specific role. So if they're not just writing to you, let them know. Or if they're writing to a classmate, that's just going to be completely different. And so let them know about any expectations, length, level of effort, number of citations required, all the details that you're going to want to see and that you base your grade on. Make sure you put that in there as concisely as possible, of course. And I know a lot of us are concerned with academic dishonesty. So you may want to ask them, or you may want to talk about the level of group participation. Is this strictly an individual assignment? Can they consult with their classmates? Because a lot of students may live in the dorms and they take an online course together and they're constantly sharing. So let them know, is this a group project? Is it a team project? Does this involve the whole class? Tell them about the process. Students aren't always very tech savvy, so you want to tell them how they will turn the assignment in. Is it through WTClass or somewhere else? If they provide a peer review, how do peers give feedback? How do you give feedback? All of that should be included. And then if you can, and I know a lot of this gets left out sometimes, but it can really help, because sometimes you should provide examples of what you want to see. And so sometimes faculty feel like, oh, well, that's just spoon feeding. But somehow it hits the right note online, because it's going to cut down on the confusion for students. And so this is really for your good students, because good students worry about absolutely everything. The small things like, do I need a cover sheet? Or do I need an abstract prefacing their work? And so if your posted example lacks those features, that's important information for some students, and it's going to save them some anxiety and wasted effort. So if you can, provide those examples, because it's a completely different ballgame online, and I would say they're necessary. And so let's go back to Mentimeter. So please, if you would like to participate, we're going to go to the next question. And we're going to give you guys a minute. So our next question, I want to hear what you guys are thinking now. So online assignments. Based on what we've covered so far, what are some of the things that you've left out in an online assignment? Or what are some things you hadn't considered in adding to your assignments? And just type in your response and we'll see what people say. Examples, yes. Typically when we do this session, everybody's like, I never thought about adding examples. And so you may want to create an example yourself, or if you've taught this class, maybe in person, get an example from a previous course. If not, you'll just have to create your own, but those are going to go a long way. Who the audience is in examples, yes. I don't know, I think sometimes when you say, I want, write this out, students are just talking to you like you're a regular person. But if you kind of change it up and you're writing to a professional, that kind of ups the quality of the writing. Selling the assignment, yeah, that's something we're not very used to, but it makes sense because if students don't want to do something and they don't see a benefit in it, they're just not going to be there for the assignment. Explicit instructions. Yes, examples needed to explain to students how to find the assignment on WTClass. I'm glad you brought that up. We're gonna look at some of this and that may help you guys in designing your assignments. Be more clear on audience. Putting preferences often are ignored no matter how many times you tell them. Selling the assignment. Yes, I understand that. And what Krista and I always recommend, and I always did that when I was teaching online, and they always said, Miss Stevenson, she's so mean. But I mean, I gave students the opportunity to read everything, but at the end of the day, if they didn't meet the expectations, they just wouldn't get the credit. And so I kind of was harsh very early on and then got more lax as the semester went on, because then they were just afraid to turn anything in late, or they were obsessed with checking on all of that because they were like, oh, she gave me a 0, or she said she wasn't going to grade it because I didn't follow this. And I mean, again, you may be labeled as the mean teacher, but I think that really helps with compliance. And so but that may not be your style. So I don't know. I'm just like, I don't have time for this. I need what I need when I need it. And if it's not there, sorry. But not everybody's like that. So just keep all those things in mind. Maybe the examples may help if you're not a mean teacher like I am. But well, let's take a look at some of these options and how we can put all of this stuff into practice in WTClass. So let's go to WTClass. Well, let me actually go back here real fast. So let's just talk about how they're going to be graded really quickly. So make sure you provide your grading criteria. State the value of the assignment so that students know how much it contributes to their course grade. So the grading criteria can be as simple as a list of elements that should be included in the assignment, or it can be a full-blown detailed rubric. And so we'll talk about how you can add some of that stuff. And if you do a rubric, then you assign a certain amount of points for increasing levels of sophistication. And so ultimately, what we're trying to hit home here is the success of student responses to an assignment often rests on the instructor's deliberate design of the assignment. By being purposeful and thoughtful from the beginning, you can ensure that your assignments will not only serve as an effective assessment method, but it's also going to engage and hopefully even have your students excited about working on it. And so just some caution, even the most, and I know a lot of you have voiced this frustration, even the most well thought out and well-planned assignment description is going to elicit questions. It's just the nature of teaching. When people learn, people's brains work differently, and they're gonna fixate on a point that you didn't cover. It's just the nature of people. And so it is useful to not only invite questions at the start of an assignment, but to check in regularly with students. And so I've been taking online courses, and I liked it when our professors would say, okay, you have an assignment due in a week, let's set up a Zoom meeting, ask me all of your questions. And so instead of getting a bazillion emails along the way, you just address them all in a Zoom meeting, post the recording, And then if a student has one of the same questions later on, refer to the Zoom recording. And so that may be helpful. And so schedule a Zoom call, solicit questions live, and have those who can't attend email their questions to you or course message their questions, and then just read them on the Zoom call and provide a video for everybody to see. And I would definitely do that for your big projects, because there's always so many questions on those. And because they may be weighted for a higher grade, it's important that they get all the details and get their questions answered. And so last but not least, every assignment requires revision. So you might want to take those opportunities, like when students have questions on how to improve their assignments, you may want to solicit feedback for those assignments. I've gotten some really creative ideas and suggestions from students, and I've been like, wow, that's wonderful. And I've changed a lot of my assignments because of students. And so there's that. So let's go ahead and move into WTClass. Let me see, let me make sure. Oh yes, somebody's asking about Menti. Of course, we can get you more information about that. Now, it's not an officially WT sponsored or endorsed product, so I'm just operating on a free version, but there is also polling within Zoom, so you might be interested in that because it's already within one of the platforms, but definitely we can talk about that. And I believe there's another one. Our office doesn't do that, but there's another one called Top Hat, so you might be interested in that, but we can talk about that afterwards. And okay, so here we are in WTClass. So when you're going to create an assignment, you enter your course and you're on the home page. Now, anytime you want to put assignments in to the actual course, I just want to point out the course menu. So think of the top half of the menu like the classroom. This is you on stage. This deals with the materials that students are using to learn. And then here at the bottom, this is backstage. This is your office. This is all the grading stuff. And okay, Betty said, who facilitates Top Hat? I believe that's the office, the teaching excellence, but we can talk about that afterward. I'm going to get through some of these settings here, so if you don't mind, we'll focus on that later. And so here on the top half, this is your classroom. This is where you present materials to students, and then the bottom half is your office, and this is where you would do all the administrative stuff for your course, like grading. So we're not going to focus on the grading right now. We're focusing on creating assignments. So you want to go to your lessons area. You can only create items in a content area. So once you're in a content area, you'll see this here. This is called the action bar, and that's where you can take action in your course. You can build your content, adding items and things like that here, but we're going to focus on assessments today. So that second button, when you hover over it, and if you go to the third option there that says assignment, that's how you can create an assignment in WTClass. And so this is going to allow a space in WTClass for students to upload files. And so it accepts multiple file types, PowerPoints, PDFs, and Word documents. And so I highly suggest that in your instructions or somewhere in your syllabus or at the start of the course, tell students to submit Word documents, because every single student at WT is given free software. So they get a free Microsoft Suite downloads. So that means they have all of the software needed to successfully submit an acceptable file in WTClass. Once you start using a Mac and using Pages and all of the other different softwares like Google softwares or Apple, then we start running into problems. So I would say tell your students to stick with Microsoft Suite. They can't say, well, I don't have access to that, because they pay for it with their tuition. And so here, I just want to briefly touch on this last option here, on the last option there, Turnitin assignment. You can create a Turnitin assignment, which has more robust plagiarism detection, but we're not going to talk about that today. If you're interested, I can give you a link. It's really simple to use. But we're going to talk about a plain assignment today, and we're going to, that doesn't mean you can't check for plagiarism here, there is an option called Safe Assign, and we'll take a look at that. And so before we create our assignment, I'm just gonna kind of show you what that looks like. Anytime you create an assignment, this is what the icon looks like. So at a glance, when you see a paper with a ruler and a pencil, you know that that's your Dropbox. If they click that link, they're going to be able to upload an assignment. And so here's just a quick sample Dropbox that I've created. I've placed instructions as an attachment. I've attached an example, and I've provided before you submit your assignment. So I put read about assignments in WTClass, review the information about submitting, checking your submissions and grades, and what to do if your file won't upload. So I've already placed that, and these are just links to our student help site. So all of us have access to this. And so it tells them right off the bat what they need to do. So they shouldn't have any questions on how to submit if you put that in there, or they'll at least know what to do if their file won't upload. And then of course your objective, this assignment relates to learning goal X. Rationale upon completion, you'll know how to handle X in the real world as a professional. You'll also practice your writing skills, which will prepare you for your final portfolio due at the end of the program, something to that effect. And then directions. Review the attached assignment directions and example. Please upload your assignment file before the due date and be sure to click submit on your submission so it's marked ready for grading. That's something we always have to remind students about. If they don't click submit, their submission won't go through. So let's take a look at how to actually create this. But this is going to be our end product, and I just wanted you guys to see that. So on the action bar, hover over assessments and click on assignment. And so here you are going to make sure that edit mode is on. If edit mode is not on, you're not going to see that action bar, and you're not going to be given those options on adding an assignment. I forgot to mention that. Also, there is this little question mark. I would suggest that everybody turn this on. If it's off, you kind of just see the options there without any instructions or any hints. But if you turn it on, then you get more hints along the instructions. So I would leave the help on, toggle that on, and make sure edit mode is on. And so here you're going to type your title. Actually, I want my assignment to be in the Unit 1 folder. I don't want it, because your assignment is going to be created anywhere in the course that you are in. So I'm actually going to make a Unit 1 assignment. So I want that to be in the Unit 1 folder. So remember, you want to chunk out your content and put it in a place where it makes sense. So I'm going to do Unit 1 assignment, and I'm going to type in Dropbox so students know that this is where you upload your assignment. And so you can change the colors here. I don't recommend changing colors just for accessibility, but sometimes people do that just to help them keep track of, okay, this assignment is part of this category, or this category for weighting, or so on and so forth. And so in this next box, you can place your instructions. And so there is a lot you can do here for your instructions. Like, let me show you. So you can copy and paste from another document. And so I've placed that in there, and sometimes it comes in with funky formatting. So if you highlight all of the text and you click this button here, it's actually an eraser. And if you hover over it, it says remove formatting. Then you're left with more plain formatting. So that's how you can do that. Let me make this a little bigger so people can actually see that. So there's your remove formatting. If you copy and paste and something looks weird, you can remove that. And I recommend removing that, and then you could go to your headings here and change all of that. So this is a full-blown text editor. You may have to expand the option here, these down arrows at the corner, to see all of that. But I would write clear instructions. We're just going to keep this plain and simple right now for demonstration purposes. But you really want to put in those instructions, remind students, submit, click submit when you're done. All right, and so you can place attachments in there. You can put links to videos. This is a full text editor, so you can adjust that accordingly. And if you need more space, you can adjust by handling this bottom corner there. And so the next section here is where you can attach assignment files. So you can browse your computer, and you can upload instructions. So maybe you have a longer set of instructions. You can type them all in that box up here, but just note that that takes up space in the course. So if they're super long, then students have to scroll to get through that content or get to it. So maybe sometimes, just depending how long it is, that's not a best practice. So if you have something longer, like I would say more than 2 paragraphs, then maybe you might want to attach a file instead. And you can attach multiple files. So I'm going to attach an example. So I've got 2 files there. If I didn't want to attach something, I can click do not attach to remove it. And then next here, you always want to put a due date, if at all possible. So once you check that box there, it'll enter in today's date and time, which makes it easier for you to find the following due date. So let's say I want this to be due in a week. So Thursday the 13th, this will be due. And if you want them to have the full day, you want to scroll all the way down on the time wizard and click end of day. End of day will give them until 11:59 p.m. And that just makes it clearer. Okay, this has to be done by the 13th at the end of the day. And the great thing about putting in a due date is you can still accept submissions if you want after the due date, if you keep the assignment available, but I like it because it gets marked late in your grading queue. So you'll see a big late little block on it and you'll know, okay, do I want to accept this or not? Another great thing about putting in a due date is students love the Blackboard app. And so if you place a due date here within the assignment, it automatically adds it to the calendar in WTClass. So that's usually in the course tools. And in addition, students can get a notification. So it'll tell them you have X assignment due in 7 days, or depending for how they set up their notification preferences. So students love that. So if you can put in those due dates. I know some faculty are like, nope, it's in the calendar, I'm not putting it in. That's an extra thing I have to do. But consider the benefits, because everybody could always use an extra reminder. And then so for grading here, there is points possible. So this is how much your assignment is worth. Now, here's a very important tip. If you are doing weighting, like if you're making specific assignments worth a higher percent than other assignments in the course, please make points possible out of 100 every single time, out of 100, out of 100. When you do that, it just makes the math clearer, because at the end of the day, you have to explain your calculations to your students. So if you can't do the calculation for weighting on your own and you can't figure out your student's grade on your own, then maybe you shouldn't do the weighting. Or if you just want to do a full points grade book, then that's kind of easier, because then you can say, okay, this assignment is worth 10 points. This assignment is worth 5 points. And things like that. But if you're doing weighting, you always want to do it out of 100 points, because if you don't, the calculation always gets a little messed up, and sometimes it benefits the students, but sometimes it doesn't. And it can be the same assignment for this, and it can be the same point values, but one student, the calculation will help out depending on how many they missed, and the other one, it'll dock them a point. And so that'll make a big difference at the end in the grand scheme of things. So always put 100 points possible, especially if you're doing percentages and weighting. And in the next section, you can add a rubric. I'm going to select a rubric because I've already had one in here. And so I'm gonna submit that. We're not gonna go over how to create a rubric. That would take way too long, but if you're interested in that, you definitely come and ask us and we'd be happy to help you with that. And here, I always want to select yes, I want my students to view that rubric. That way, everything's clear on why they got the amount of points that they got. So I'm going to say, yes, we want that visible to students, and I do want to use it for grading. And what's cool about this, once I show you how we're going to grade these, I can click on that rubric, just click, click, click. Did they do this? Did they not do that? And then it automatically grades it for me based on the clicks that I click on there. And then so next we've got submission details. Now here is where you can determine if this is going to be a group or an individual assignment. Now typically you could leave the defaults here. There is a way to do group submissions. The cool thing about group submissions is one person from the group submits, and if you place 5 students in that group, that one submission, you only grade 1. So you grade that one submission by whoever in the group submitted it, and then you enter in 1 grade and it's available for all of them. So that's the cool thing about group assignments. We're gonna stick to an individual submission today. If you wanna learn more about that, just let us know. And then here is where you may wanna change the defaults. And this is super important because I guarantee you, if you don't change this, you're gonna get a lot of emails once submissions come around. So here's the number of attempts for an assignment. It's defaulted to single attempt. So that means they get 1 shot. They can upload multiple files into one Dropbox, but once they hit submit, they only have 1 try. And so consider changing it to multiple or unlimited attempts. It's up to you what you want to do. And the reason why is if there's an error with the upload, the student has poor internet, something goes wrong, it'll take away that attempt, or they put in the wrong file. Then they'll email you and say, Professor, I need another attempt. And then you have to log into WTClass, find the student, find the assignment, and add another attempt. And that can be a little frustrating because usually students are gonna ask this before the assignment is due. And so if you have an assignment due at 11:59 on Sunday night, they're gonna email you at 11 and say, hey, I made a mistake, can you reset this? And they're just trying to get their submission in and you may not get to it. And so this causes all sorts of issues afterward. So I would say you maybe want to select multiple attempts. If you select multiple attempts, these options expand and it says, okay, how many attempts do you want to give them? You can place 2, 3, 4, however many attempts you want to give them. I would say 3 is sufficient maybe. And then here, based on, let's say if there was a student and they made all 3 attempts, what should we do with those attempts? So I would say keep the last graded attempt. So that way, and once they submit, if they do multiple submissions, you see a list. And so you can see which is the latest submission and just choose to grade the latest one. And so once you grade that, let's say that the student earns a B, you enter in a B, now it'll take away all the other submissions if you have last graded attempt submitted. So you're not having to grade every single submission that they put in. You can do unlimited attempts, but if a student submits 10 different times, then you're gonna have 10 different submissions in your queue. So you always wanna select last graded attempt, or there are options to keep the highest grade, the lowest grade. For instance, if maybe they're working on a draft, or if you let them resubmit for a higher grade, then you might want to select highest grade, just depending on what you're doing with those attempts. Are you just giving them attempts so they don't come back later and say, oh, I need another attempt? Then you just might want to do multiple, enter in a number, and then select last graded. But if you're going to do an average or you're going to have them resubmit later, then you might want to do the highest grade or average of graded attempts. So all of those are there. I mean, I guess you could keep their lowest grade, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. But it's there if you want to put that in there. And then last but not least in this section here, here's those plagiarism tools I was telling you about. Let's see, so we've got a question. So multiple attempts allow students to see their grade each time, and they could continue to submit until they get the highest possible score. No, this is not a test. This is just a file upload. So if they get multiple attempts, let's say I'm a student, I upload 3 times. So highest score would mean, let's say I submit a draft and you grade it, I see my grade and you're like resubmit and I can up your grade if you make these corrections. And the student resubmits, and then you give them a new grade instead of you having to go in and choose the highest score. Because if you're doing that for 50 students, that's going to get old really quick. You could just set it to highest grade and it would automatically keep the highest grade. But this isn't a test, so if you do multiple attempts, you're just going to get the last upload and that's what you're going to grade, and it'll just keep the highest one. I hope that makes sense. Yes, no. Students, so one of the questions online, she put, okay, so the students don't see their grade from each attempt. No, because you have to grade it. So they're not, these are not auto graded. You have to go in and grade these, which I'm glad you pointed out. So this isn't like tests where students get an auto grade and then they can go back and make corrections. No, this is a file upload. You place a grade and you determine, okay, do I want to keep the last graded assignment? If there's multiple grades, do I want to keep the highest grade? And so Krista's saying students would see their grade for each attempt, only if you grade each attempt. Good point. Thank you, Krista. And so hopefully that makes sense. And here's those plagiarism tools. If you want to check your submissions for plagiarism, there is an option. Here's a little program within WTClass. It's called Safe Assign. If you want to check it, you can check that box. And if you're doing a draft, I would say exclude the submission from the database, because you don't want students to submit a draft and then they submit their final and then their final gets flagged 100% because it's saying, well, I have a file just like this. So you want to exclude that if it's a draft. I would say always include, if it's a final paper, always include it in the database. And then here's this option here. Do you want to allow your students to view their originality report? I would say yes, but you don't have to make it available if you don't want to. And so I'm just going to exclude mine from the database. Or actually, I'll include it so you can see, because I've submitted this file multiple times, so it's going to flag it 100%. And then here in this next section, we've got the grading options. And you won't have to do too much of this. You can enable anonymous grading, which we'll go over in just a second. And you can enable delegated grading, meaning if you've got multiple TAs and you want to break up the grading between them, you could do that as well. But if you have any questions, just let us know. And then here on the display of grades, this is what these are. You might just want to leave these on the default, but it's good to go through them. And so here, this is how your grade is going to be displayed in the grade book. So the primary is the score. And so you can change that to show the percentage, or if you just want to know if they made a submission or not, you can do complete or incomplete. In addition, there is a secondary display, but just note that this is only visible to you. So if you maybe select primary, the primary grade to show a score, and it's maybe 25 points out of 40 points, and you want to know what that translates into, you could set your secondary display to percentage, and then you could get a feel for, okay, what is that in terms of percentages? But again, just note that only you can see that, and that's just going to be in your grade center. And then here it's already defaulted to include this assignment in the calculation for grades in your grade book. And so this is going to automatically create a column for you. So don't feel like you have to go in and create columns for all of your assignments and then come and create them in here. No, once you create your assignment within WTClass, it's automatically going to create a column for you. And these are the options for that column. And so yes, you want it to be included in the grading, and hopefully most faculty, they do want to show it to their students in My Grades, but you can uncheck it if you don't. And then there is an option to show students how they ranked among the rest of the class once you get all the grades in. But some faculty like to click on that, others don't want to answer the questions on why am I scoring so low compared to the rest of the class. And then so next, there's a section on availability. And so like Krista was telling you guys about tests yesterday, this is the power to the building here. You want to always make sure the power's on. So we want to make the assignment available, make sure that's always clicked, try not to mess with that. And then if you don't want students to see it right then here's where you can limit the availability. So you can check on the box, and that's going to automatically enter in today's date and time, which makes it easier for you to use the calendar and the time wizard. So I would check that box, and we can say we want this to display after a specific date. And then, so that means that, okay, after, let's say I want to do after Monday the 10th, I want this to pop up at the end of the day. And then I can set it to display until, meaning I want this to go away after 2 days at the end of the day. So we can set up dates that way. If you want it to be available, you can just uncheck display after and it'll be available now, and you can, if you want, you can remove that. But if they're not checked, then it's not gonna set that option. So I want this to be available because I want to be able to show you what it looks like in the student preview. So I'm making that available, but I'll say I want it to go away in a couple days. And then you can also track the number of views. So now that we've selected all of our options, we can hit submit. And so you might be wondering, where is my assignment? I did all of that, and where is it? Well, anytime you add something to WTClass, it's gonna add it to the bottom of your list. So if you've already got stuff in there, you gotta scroll all the way down to find it. And so I really don't want this at the end here, so you can always move any items in WTClass. Just hover over the edge and you'll see that purple bar and that four-headed arrow, and you can just slide it up. And so I want this to go after the notes. So there's my assignment. There's all of the information we put in. And let's go ahead and take a look at what students see. So once you've created your assignment, you can actually test it as a student as long as you've made it available. So if it's available and you go into student preview, you'll be able to see it. But if you set it to open after today, after this point in time, then you're not going to be able to see it in student preview. So student preview is going to give you a good preview of, is this available or is it not? And if it's not available, you can always edit. So here's how to edit your assignments. You want to go back to wherever it is in your lessons area, click that drop down arrow and select edit. And then that'll take you back to all of those settings. And so just to be clear, if you wanted to create a fast drop box, you just type in your title, your instructions, you can attach any files, put in your due date, make sure you put your points possible, and then maybe adjust your number of attempts and select, set your availability and hit submit. I think most people are okay with the rest of the defaults, so that's just an easy way to make a quick assignment. You don't have to go through every single option. And so I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to edit that. But now let's go into student preview mode and see what this looks like to a student. So this is a student preview, and I'm here on the home page, so I need to go to my lessons to look at that assignment. And so there's that introductory assignment I showed you at the start. I'm going to go to Unit 1 because that's where we put our assignment Dropbox. And so let's take a look at what it looks like. So this is what a student would have to do. They just click on the title link, and then this is what it looks like to them. So here's the due date, and then if it tells them how many points are possible, and if there's a rubric associated with this, they can click here and view that rubric and see how they'll be graded. So you might want to include that on the instructions. Please view the rubric that's attached in this assignment information. And so here's my instructions. There's those attachments. And then students can either write a text submission or they can attach a file. So it's up to you. I know a lot of nursing faculty, sometimes they prefer that text submission. They don't want all the fluff with all the formatting. But then sometimes for big papers, they need to know that students know how to format in a specific style. So in those cases, they may require that they attach files. If you don't have a preference, then students have the option for both. But if you have a preference, just let them know. So they can either write a text submission in this box here, or they can browse their computer and attach an assignment. I'm going to attach a student paper here just so we can see what it looks like. Now, if you have an assignment that has multiple file requirements, all you have to do is create one Dropbox. Unless you want to keep track of the different documents with different Dropboxes, then you can create more than one, but you can upload multiple files. And students can click do not attach just the way you do when you're creating your assignment to get rid of those. They can add a comment here. And then here's where things get tricky for students. So just so you know why I said you should probably make sure you click submit on your assignment in your instructions, because students often forget this. So sometimes students think, well, I attached the assignment, I'm done, I don't have to do anything else. But that doesn't do anything. That doesn't submit the assignment. They actually have to click submit to get it. And sometimes they'll just move away from this page, or they'll save the draft. If students save a draft and don't hit submit, there is no way for you to get to that draft. And you'll see a little blue wheel in your grade book. It'll say in progress. And so tell students to make sure and hit submit. If not, it's not going to go through. So I'm going to make sure and hit submit. And so just so you're aware, because I know you're going to get a lot of questions. Well, I turned that in. I know I turned that in. Well, if students come to you with that and you see that there's no submission, ask them to get you the submission confirmation number. Because as you can see here, anytime you make a submission as a student, you get this purple bar across the top of your page, and there's a confirmation number. And so it says copy and save this number as proof of your submission. So students can screenshot that or save it. And here's a link so they can view all of their submission receipts. Now, in addition to that, it doesn't just give them the visual cue here, but it also sends them an email to their BUFF's email address. So if they claim to have submitted something and they don't have that confirmation number, then they probably just saved it as a draft or moved away from the page and they did not hit submit. So that's an easy way to tell if they submitted or not. And I'll show you how to look these up if you need to in your grade book. But so here students can review their submission, and they always should. So this is what a text submission looks like. Here we have a list of all the submissions. So I did a text submission, I submitted a paper here. So they can actually check and make sure that that is the right document. And so you get a preview here. It takes a while. Now sometimes students don't always see the preview, and that's probably because it's not a supported file type. And again, just recommend that your students use all the Microsoft products, because we know those files work for sure. And so here's a preview of this other submission. And so while we're on the topic of problems with submissions, one of the most common problems we see when students are trying to submit, they say, well, I can't submit, or maybe you get an empty file and they submitted. It's because the student is using an unsupported browser. So right now, the best browsers for students to be using is Firefox and Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome. So we see the least amount of issues on those typically, and those just make it easier for submissions. But if they're using Internet Explorer or any of the browsers like Edge, and this goes for you too when you're creating your assignments or working in WTClass, always make sure you're using Firefox or Chrome. Those are going to give you the best experience, and you're going to run into less hiccups. And so in addition to this page here, of course, like we were talking about earlier, this isn't auto-graded. Here, the student can just check their submission. It tells them it's out of 100 points. They can look at the rubric here, but there's nothing in it because we haven't gone in to grade it. And then here's the student comment. And because we've set this up for multiple attempts, the student could click on the link as long as the assignment link is open and start a new submission. So I could start a new submission and enter in a whole new attempt if I needed to, if something went wrong with my first one. So I'm going to, since we're in the student preview mode already, I'm going to show you what a graded assignment looks like. So as a student, they are going to go to their My Grades link. Now this is just for students, so remember, this is like being in the classroom. That's not where you do your work. You do it in another part of the course. But students can click on My Grades, and they can see every single assignment or discussion, anything that's worth a grade, they can see that in the grade book. And then here, I've already graded their introductory assignment. So if students want to review a submission, they could click on My Grades. I know it doesn't look like this link is clickable, but they can. Here where it says introductory assignment, I can click on that and go back to the submission page. And so I can also view the rubric here in My Grades. And so there's a rubric that I've already worked with, and they can see how many points they got. And then it tells them when it was due, what type of assessment it is. This is an assignment, when it was graded, at what time, and they can see their grade. And here is a comment bubble. So here's some feedback I left the student. Please see rubric and listen to audio comments, and I left them some audio comments. And so you may be wondering, wow, how do I do all that? I'll show you how to do that in next. So if students click on that, they could go and see this is what it looks like to them once it's been graded. And they can download their submission. And so there's lots of new tools up here, and we're going to talk about this new inline grader. It's called Blackboard Annotate. Before we had box view, and those features were a little lacking, and so now we have a lot more things. We can add stamps, we can add writing, highlighting, comments in the paper, comments outside of the paper. So this is what a student could potentially see when something is graded, but let's take a look at how to do all that now. So this is the end product here, and so let's look at what we're going to do. So I'm going to exit the preview. I'm going to keep my preview user data just so I can keep that submission, and we have things in our submission area to grade. And so I know I've been talking forever, so let's just take a little break, and I want to hear what you're thinking. I'm actually going to go to a new Menti poll. So please bear with me. You're going to need to enter in a brand new code. Now we're going to talk about WTClass assignments. So I'm going to present this to you guys. So if you refresh your browser or go to menti.com, and I'm going to type in a brand new code in there for you guys. So the code is 575039. And so here's some brand new questions. So how many submission attempts will you allow your students on assignments? Since that's one of the most important options that you need to review when you're creating your assignment. Have you thought about it? And I know it'll depend. It'll depend on the assignment. But as of now, you're going to give multiple attempts, it looks like. A few people said unlimited. Yeah, I think I would go with unlimited. And very few people said one attempt. All right, well, that's good to know. It's always good to know what your colleagues are doing. I think I really think multiple attempts will help cut down on emails for most of you, but sometimes you just want that single attempt. You want them to get it right the first time and talk to you as to why they didn't get that submission right the first try. All right, so let's go back here. All right, so now that we know how to create an assignment, we've looked at what it looks like to a student and how they can check their grades. Let's talk about, okay, how do we grade all of this? And so remember we talked about earlier, this bottom here, this bottom portion of the menu, this is like your office. This is where you get all of your administrative stuff done here. This is backstage. And so what you're going to want to do, this is a common question we see. People create their content and then they're like, okay, well, how do I go grade this stuff? You can't grade anything through the lessons area. This is like the classroom. You're not going to grade in front of everybody. You're going to go behind the scenes. So here is the grade center. So if you click on that, it expands a menu, and I would recommend that you go through needs grading, or you can also go to the full grade center. But let's start off with needs grading. And so here are all of the assignments that have been turned in by students in this course. So you can actually sort through these. If there were different categories, you'd see discussion boards and other items. So you can sort through all of that. You can sort through specific users if you needed to, or you could sort through specific items. One tip, if you begin grading, I would try and grade all of the assignments that are alike. That way you're not having to switch gears like, okay, I know these are the answers I'm looking for in this assignment, so I'm gonna grade all of these so I have those answers straight instead of having to switch gears between different types of assignments. So let's say I'm gonna decide to grade these introductory assignments. I can see what type of assessment it is. If this is an assignment, here's the name. Here's who turned it in, when they turned it in, and when it was due. So as you can see here, if you put in a due date, it'll mark submissions as late here. So I know when I look at these submissions, I'm gonna decide, do I even wanna look at these submissions? Am I gonna accept them, or am I gonna take some points off because they were late? And this is just a nice visual cue for you on if they were on time or not. And if you don't want late submissions, then just change your availability on your assignment. Then once the assignment is due, then have the link to the assignment close. And so I'm gonna grade the introductory assignment. I can either click on the student name, but I wanna grade every single introductory assignment all at once. Let's say I've got some time and I'm gonna grade all of these. If you click the drop-down arrow by the item name, you can select grade all users or grade with usernames hidden. So if you wanna remain unbiased, you can grade these submissions without student names on them. Of course, if they put their name on their paper or somewhere in the submission, you're gonna see that, but it won't be on the actual grade pane itself. If you wanna grade with student names, you can click grade all users. So there's 3 submissions for this specific assignment. So here, you can preview the student document there, and then you can use these options to switch between the pane view. If there's multiple pages, you could expand that to see that. You can move through the pages if there were multiple pages. You can pan through it, you can zoom in and out, or you can make the paper fit the full screen. And then in addition, you can view the annotation tools. So you have a pen there, and if you click these drop-down arrows, you can use a brush if you wanted to, or you can actually, probably you'd want to use the drawing feature. So you can just mark things out on there. And there's some very in-depth features there. You can change the opacity. Do I want to make it darker or lighter? If I don't want those X's there, I can delete them. And then it asks, are you sure? Do you want to confirm and delete those? But there is an eraser as well, so you could go in and do partial erases. I don't know why you'd want to use the brush, but I guess if you want to get artistic in there, you could. And then here, you can actually upload an image. You might have some type of image that you want to put in there. What I think is really cool is the stamp feature. There's existing stamp designs, so you can stamp things virtually. And the cool thing is you can create your own as well. So if you want to create a funny stamp or just something to get their attention, that option is there. And then so you can also create a text box within the page, and then you can type in there. And if you don't like where that's situated, you can click out of it and click back on it and move it around. Again, you can change the text and opacity, but I don't know if we want to get too in depth into that. And you can make lines and shapes on the paper as well, if you needed to. That might be useful in some other classes. And here in this drop-down, you can actually select different shapes if you had to make them. So there's a ton more options here. You can also highlight some text, and either you can highlight it with highlighting, you can cross through it, you can underline it, you can squiggle it. So there's a lot more editing options. So those of you who grade papers, there's a lot more things you can do with that. And you can make a comment. These aren't the text comments up here. These are different. And once you hit submit, it puts it on the side of the paper. And so students can see your comments outside of the paper. And if you want to delete those, you can just click on them and select that delete button. So there's a ton of inline grading that you can do there. There's a ton of options. that's basically how all that works. Now, if I have a rubric attached, you want to make sure that this little blue pane is expanded, because that's how you can access your gradebook if you've attached one. This is where you put your comments back to your learners. This is how you can add audio feedback. So here I've got a rubric, so I'm going to click on that. And let's say I can click through these, and as you can see, it's already added all of those points up for me. Now I can write feedback in each of these boxes if I want to and hit save. So once I hit save, it automatically updates the grade there, or I could manually type in a grade there and hit enter. Oops. And so if I expand this view here, because we ran it through Safe Assign, I could view the originality report, and that'll open up in a new window here. And I could go through and see, wow, this student just plagiarized this whole thing here. And so like I've told you guys before, I've submitted this file multiple times. And so that's how you can view the report. If you make it available to students, they can go to their My Grades and view that report as well. And we've already talked about how to get to the rubric here. You can leave them comments here. If you leave some other type of comment, or if you're using a rubric, you might want to put C rubric and listen to audio comments. And so the way you can provide audio comments is you see this box here that has an A. It's the third box underneath this here. And so it says click to open full content editor. So if you click on that, on the third row, hopefully it's expanded. If it's not, you can use the double-headed arrows here at the top right to expand that. And so here on the left, on the third row, there's this microphone. And so you can insert a recording there. Now this works best in Google Chrome. I know they say it works in Firefox, but I've never gotten it to work there. And so when you're ready to record, you can record there. You can either just record your video or you can just record audio. So if you want to be on camera, you have to enable the video. So it's automatically just going to do an audio comment. So you can do that there and provide them that. And so just make sure you save that audio comment and that you don't move away from it, and then make sure you hit save and then submit, and they'll get an audio comment that way. And so once you're done and you've placed your grade, you used your rubric, if you had one, you've put your comments in there, you can hit submit. And then once you hit submit, and because I told in the needs grading, because I said I want to grade all of these at once, it automatically brought up the next assignment to grade. So you can zoom through these. I can either use my grade book or just put in a grade in there. I can hit enter and move into the next one. Or if I need to, if I maybe forgot something, I can use these arrows up here to move between student submission attempts. There's also options up here. I can jump to specific users. I can say, you know what, I want to hide the usernames up here. And so those are just some of the options that are available. Now there's another way to grade. You don't always have to go to needs grading, or sometimes you forget to turn, and this doesn't apply to assignments, but you may forget to turn on grading for a discussion board or something like that, and you don't find a student's assignment in needs grading. What if it's missing from here because you turned grading on late? Well, you can always go to the full grade center. So if you click on grade center there and expand the menu, you can click on full grade center, or if you directly want to go to the full grade center, just click on this here, that arrow, and you'll go straight to it. You save a click. So this is the full grade center. You'll see a list of all of your students and then all of the assignments going all the way across. Anytime you add a new assignment, it'll add it to the end of the grade book. So because we just made this unit 1 assignment drop box, that is where my column is. It's at the very end. And so here's some of the symbols you want to be aware of. Anytime you see this in your grade book, you can hover over it and it says it needs grading. So there's a submission that I haven't graded. There's an icon legend here that'll tell you what all this means. And so remember, if they have a draft or they're not done with their discussion boards, or they're in the middle of an exam, you might see these little blue wheels. And so here I have a draft somewhere, or actually that's a discussion. So it just says attempt in progress. So those are what those icons mean. I could go directly here. Let's say if I missed this in my needs grading, if I forgot to access it there, or it just wasn't in my needs grading, I can visually see that, okay, I need to grade this. And so this is what it looks like when there's multiple attempts. Here, I can say, I just want to grade this last attempt, or maybe I want to look at all of these attempts and see what's going on, but you can select the attempt from here. Let's say I want to grade this, I could go to the attempt and view it, and it'll take me back to that inline grader. And so here I can see multiple attempts. So if you allow several attempts, you may see all of this here, and you may want to stick to grading the last attempt. And so I'm going to go back to my full grade center. I'm going to take the shortcut and just click that arrow there. Now, another thing you need to be aware of, I know, I think at least one person said, nope, I'm just doing one single submission. I'm going to leave it on the default. Well, let's say there is a technical issue and a student emails you and says, hey, I did a boo-boo, or I messed up. Can you please allow me another attempt? Well, if I needed to allow someone another attempt, you can find the student in your gradebook and then go all the way down to where the assignment is and click on that drop-down arrow like we were just at to view the attempts, but instead go to the view grade details. So when you view the grade details, this page pops up. And so this is the most current attempt here. And so this person made multiple attempts, and you can actually clear the attempt or ignore it. Sometimes I would say instead of clearing the attempt, because that actually deletes the attempt and gives them another one, I would say ignore it. That way you have proof of that first attempt. And that way the student can't come back with, well, they just deleted my attempt. So I would do ignore attempt, and then it'll tell you, it'll confirm this attempt is ignored, and then the student can get their next attempt. Or you can just click allow additional attempt here if you just want to keep all the attempts that are there. And so typically you're going to want to do this when you just have one single attempt allowed. I think if you would allow unlimited or multiple, you may not run out, but you never know. Sometimes students have weird issues with technology. So that's how you can do that. Here's another way to grade. So you might grade from your needs grading, or let's say I want to grade all of these introductory assignments. I can click this drop-down arrow here, and I can grade all the attempts from here. So if you find that something's missing in your needs grading, you can always come to this column and grade every single attempt that is now available. And sometimes it happens for some reason. Maybe you're in the middle of grading and you move away and you need to come back to something, but it's not in your needs grading, or there's something weird that happened and it's not there. You can always get to all of your assignments here. And so I can go through and make sure that I've graded all of these. So there's 6 of 6 gradable items for that specific introductory assignment. So I'm going to go back to the Grade Center. And again, there's that option to grade anonymously as well. So if there's an assignment here, click on that drop-down arrow, and you can actually go to grade with usernames hidden. And then the way that looks is, here's student 1, and you can move to the next one. Here's student 2. You can move to the next one. But again, you know, if they put their name on the paper, you're going to see it. But that option is there if you want it. One last thing I want to show you guys about the Grade Center is maybe sometimes you won't be able to grade online. If you're going on a trip or you're going to leave somewhere and there's not going to be internet available, maybe, or you're just old school and you've got a bunch of papers to grade and you want to write on those papers and grade that way. You can download submissions and print them off. And so the way you do that is, let's say I want this introductory assignment here. I can click on that drop down arrow in the column, and then I can do an assignment file download. Or maybe I need to keep these for accreditation or for some documentation. You can download all of these assignments. So when you click assignment file download, you get a list of everybody who's in the course there and if they've submitted. And so here, since I've already graded these, I may not want to print them. So I'm just gonna print the one that's in needs grading here. Or if you want to select all the users, you can select all the boxes there. But I'm gonna just select this one here that needs grading. And then here it tells you, okay, so what do you want to download? Do you just want to download the last attempt or every single attempt? Well, I know from earlier that this student here submitted 3 attempts. I don't want all of those papers to grade. I don't need to print them all out. I'm just gonna print the last attempted file. So once you select the files you want to print and select the files to download, hit submit. And then it's telling you the assignments are being packaged and you can download them now. So I'm going to click on that link there and I get a nice little zip file. And then I can open that zip file. And then there's the download. So because in that submission, there was a text submission, I got a text document, and then there was also a file submission and I got a Word document as well. So then I could print these off or I could save these for whatever documentation I need at a later date. So that's how you can download all that. Are there any questions about the Grade Center so far? Also, if you don't want to do inline grading, maybe I know sometimes you just may give credit to an assignment because they turned it in. You can actually go to the student name and the assignment. You can click on the column and I'm just going to say, Krista turned something in. She gets an automatic 100 because she attempted that assignment. So you can override and just enter in grades there. If I needed to, if I made a mistake, I can click on the column again and delete that. And I can say, yes, I want to override the grade and hit submit. And then so there, it'll revert back to the way it was. And so I can change grades here if I need to. And I can say, oh, well, these people turned in their grades, their papers late, so I can dock 10 points. So you can also just automatically manually enter in grades. And when you manually enter in a grade here, when you're not grading from inline, you get this little orange square. So that means you just did a manual override versus using the inline grader. All right, so one last question. I want to see what you guys are thinking. So now that you know about creating effective assignments and now that you've seen those options in WTClass, do you now feel better prepared to create and grade an effective assignment in WTClass? So are you going to be like the first picture, you're just typing away, ready to do your assignments? Or do you feel like you still need extra help? Looks like everybody feels very prepared, and that's what we like to hear. So let me just go back here really quickly. And so thank you guys. You guys have been troopers here all week. And so we have one last training tomorrow, and that'll be on discussion boards. I highly recommend it. It's always good to have a space where students can share and do actual kind of replicate those discussions that you're used to in your face-to-face courses. So that'll be tomorrow's final training. And as always, if you need anything, please contact us and we'll be happy to help you. I told you guys I would share some links with you. So here are some assignment ideas. These are outside links. We may not have the tools that are mentioned in these links, but we can certainly help you select a tool from our WT offerings if you see an idea you like. So here's some ideas. I'm going to put these in the chat. I saw some pretty good assignment ideas on these, but again, we may have to tailor them a little differently if we don't have the tools that they're mentioning there. And again, these are outside recommendations, so I can't vouch for every single thing, but there's some ideas if you need them. And again, please contact us if you need anything. We hope to see you tomorrow in the discussion session. And if there's not any more questions, then I will see you guys later. And okay, so I will answer Betty's question. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Betty. So Krista, if they're interested in using Top Hat, who is that through?
They need to contact Dr. Brian Vizzini.
Okay, so it is for the teaching.
Yes, and the Teaching Excellence Center. Yeah, they are the ones that are kind of in control of that as of right now.
Yes, so if you're interested in using polling outside of Zoom, there is Zoom polling. You guys have participated in some of that with Krista on her sessions. If you want to use something that's a little more robust, you might consider Top Hat, and that is through the Teaching Excellence Center with Dr. Brian Vizzini. You can contact him if you're interested in that. Unfortunately, that's not a tool that we know much about, but we can at least direct you to him for those questions. And then last but not least, if you're interested in Mentimeter, we don't have a full-blown subscription for that. I just made a free account at mentimeter.com. And the downside to that is that you're only allowed like 2 questions per presentation. So that's why I had to give you 2 different meeting codes. So if you want to do more than 2 questions per class, then you're going to have students dealing with multiple codes. So I hope that helps. There's different questions that you can do in Mentimeter. There's word clouds, they can do rankings, there's all sorts of things. So if you need additional assistance, I will do my best to troubleshoot on those. Again, it's not our official product, but I know a little bit about it since I've been able to do these simple questions for you guys. Any additional info to share about menti.com? Yes. And so hopefully, did I cover enough about Mentimeter? So if you want to create your own account, you don't go to menti.com. Menti is just like the short form for your students when you have a code already made. But if you want to make an account, you need to go to the full website. Let me see. And so I'm going to put that in the chat for you. So there's the full site, and that's where you can create your own free account. And again, the free account is very limited, but it's fun. I like them, and I like that you can use GIFs, and that kind of draws students' attention a little bit more. All right, well, thank you guys. Let us know if you need anything, and I'm going to go ahead and end the session now.